7:02, so we'll call the meeting to order. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We'll start the agenda with the acceptance of Secretary's report. Is there a motion to accept? For a second?
Sure, second.
Oh, great discussion. Okay. All right. Hearing no discussion. The meeting is being transcribed.
Oh, good, okay. I think I didn't check that out.
Okay. All right, so no discussion on the Secretary's report. We'll vote on the motion to accept. Laura?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that is unanimous. Moving on to acceptance of monthly staff reports. Is there a motion to accept?
Yes.
Okay. Great discussion.
So I obviously have been following it from a Stoneham angle as well, but I don't know if you just want to talk a little bit. So if Stoneham does defund their library, which is how it looks like it's going to happen for their town meeting, that would mean that Stoneham residents would not be able to access their library anymore.
Right, so they would no longer, as of July 1st, they would no longer be certified. And this library has a policy, as most libraries in Noble have a policy, to not serve residents of uncertified libraries. The idea being that you're not contributing, so people are welcome here, they're welcome to use the materials here, but they would be limited to story time unless there was space, and they wouldn't be able to check anything out.
Can we change that policy?
We could change that
I'll
policy.
tell you what, it seems to me when I read this, that it was punishing library users for a public vote, of their town. The consequences of having probably an extra flow of customers of patrons from another town would not be that great. I don't see a cost or even a danger, a risk of losing material.
Yeah, so as a librarian, you wanna serve everyone who comes through the door and you
Right.
never wanna say no.
Right.
And it's not instinctive to not serve an uncertified town. But there's no incentive for anybody to actually contribute to their budget if there are no consequences. So if John Grisham has a bestseller and we buy it, we consider that Stoneham and all of the surrounding towns are buying that too, so that the hold lists are a certain size because we're all chipping in and buying it. If they're not contributing anything, it's affecting, so that means a Stoneham patron whose taxes are not going to library service at all would have access to our materials at the expense of a Wakefield patron who pays it.
Whether that patron comes from an uncertified library or a certified library really shouldn't affect that. I mean, if they're going to deny a Wakefield patron a book anyway, if they take that book out. If I come from the Science Library.
It's a financial calculation. why would Wakefield residents put $1 million into their library if they can just go to Reading?
Well, if it becomes a permanent or a long-term problem, I think that's a different story. We're talking about here, in fact, I'm a little shocked that they're gonna decertify the library. That sounds like a further punishment. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a long-term thing. You know, if 6 months later, you find a flood of patrons from Stoneham taking advantage of it, then maybe you would consider it. They've got to come with a library card anyway, right?
Yeah.
You would not
Well,
serve,
not a,
you would not serve somebody from outside the system without a library, that doesn't have a library card, right? You have to be able to verify.
well, they would just get a card. Yeah, and we'll take cards from other
Right.
noble libraries.
So I bring a card from Stoneham, it's now an uncertified library, and it demonstrates that I was a user of that library, and
Right, it's
Point
not
of
just
view.
it's not just being a user of the library, it's connected to your
The contribution,
residence.
right.
So if you're a resident of Stoneham,
Right.
you
yeah.
that's when we would
I think it's
refuse to
presumptuous. I
serve.
think it's presumptuous because it says that, you know, regardless of what your point of view is about an override, that, you know, a tax override, that person could be perhaps totally opposed to it. Okay, I mean, they become a victim of that policy.
But yes,
That's
they
the
are
point.
they are a victim of that policy. Absolutely, they're a victim of the policy. But if we continue to serve them, Wakefield residents are also a victim of that policy at a very time when Wakefield residents are actually contributing. So, you know, Wakefield residents always support us, and always, one of the things that did come up that's different, this happened once before, it happened in Saugus. Saugus was not certified. So there were two things. One is, I was totally for serving Saugus residents until it was explained to me that, but they're not contributing. So if the whole system only works when everyone contributes. So you want them to contribute. Number two is, you can't say, you know, oh, if they take care of this, if they close their library, it will take years to reach certification again. Because you're certified on your prior, your prior costs and benefits.
You know, and what's the logic for first of all, are they zero funding? They are withholding funds entirely from the library, so the budget.
So they're,
I haven't heard the
so
latest.
essentially their budget is in such a shape that the override fails, so they're going to town meeting, I think on May 1st. And at this point, you know, it's not just the library, it's the senior center, which is getting zero funded, it's the rec department that's getting zero funded, it's a number of municipal services, and I think
And schools are.
and well, the schools are losing, you know, they have to cut funding, they just laid off a bunch of people, so it's not, you know, it's not a great situation, for any of the departments. I think the challenge is that if at that town meeting, somebody can say, oh, we don't need the library, we can just go to Wakefield anyways, it's less of a incentive when people get up and say, hey, we can't zero fund our library, we need to keep this running. So it's, I mean, as you said, I remember Saugus being left out in the cold a little bit for a while, because Stoneham was decertified previously as well. A couple decades ago, they went through this process.
And the other thing about not being certified is, you have to really not be trying at all, because there are waivers available. Wakefield had waivers 3 or 4 years in a row in the early 2000s, because we couldn't make the true appropriation, but we were trying. And as long as the library is not cut disproportionately to other town departments, they see that you're trying. You know, nobody wants to do it, but it is an incentive, and it tends to be that librarians want it in place, because it's the only thing you have to really work as an incentive to get people. We had people very early on come in here and say, well, it's not gonna affect me because Wakefield's my library. And the staff had to say, but Wakefield's not your library if you don't, it's not your home library.
Right.
Because you don't live here, you're not actually contributing to it.
I'm not arguing about the certification, not certification, it's really the user, the individual that walks over here, comes in here from Stoneham. It seems to be a punishment for decisions that they may not have had anything to do with. And the cost to us, I know the issue about contribution, but the cost to us would not be.
So
The cost to us is significant. If we're all putting in $200,000 for materials and they're not putting in anything,
Yeah,
And
the
no,
same amount
I'm
of
saying
people use
the cost to us of that user.
So we actually have the numbers of this month's staff reports.
Say what?
We actually have comparable numbers of this month's staff reports. We saw a big influx of folks from Melrose, but their library temporarily closed. So it was a good bump in checkouts, but a significant bump in holds. So that's gonna be a drain on, not just the books, but the staff as well.
Okay, so it looks like we're not changing the policy.
So
we have
I'll also say,
time to look at it.
Yeah.
I would bring that to the next meeting.
I agree, the patrons are the only ones who are suffering right now.
Right, that's the point. That's better, much better put than.
But I think that, you know, the town you live in, you're responsible for being active and to making the decision. So, you know, I don't agree with every decision Wakefield's made, but you know, and I can vote, but if it goes another way, you know, that's what happens, that's how it falls out. And you have to be active in that, and you know, you have wins and you have losses. I think personally it's probably, if it's very messed up, hopefully they'll come to some agreement. But I mean, if we gave library, if they're closing the senior center, can they come? You know, any department they're closing, oh, well, I'll just go here, there, and everywhere. It gives, I don't know, it doesn't say much about the town, but it says if you're in the town, it's kind of your responsibility to work to fix it.
What is Noble's policy if their library is decertified? Are they cut off from ebooks as well?
That's the new thing that we have to think about, because they, in fact, it depends on what they pay for. If they maintain their Noble membership, so if they close 100%, they probably wouldn't maintain their Noble membership, except the Noble contract says that you have to give a year's notice if you're gonna leave. So that means if they close their library, they're still on the hook for their Noble membership, in which case there is some digital materials that they will have paid for. So, you know, how does that fall out? They have to have access to that. But we really need to see what's gonna happen there. I know that you know, if Wakefield was gonna be not certified, if the town was not gonna give us money, I wouldn't want Wakefield residents to be able to go to other towns, because then they're not gonna advocate for you. They're not gonna advocate for their own facility. You need a hue and cry to say,
Well,
this is important to us. And it's more than just the materials that you give, it's that building on Main Street.
I see that as Stone's problem, not ours. You know, if they have customers that are able to come here and have full privileges, therefore they're not gonna allocate to Stoneham, it's not our problem, it's Stoneham's problem.
But it is our
Do you know what other towns, you said that most others have this policy? What other
Yes.
towns do not?
Most of the I don't know of any that don't.
Yeah.
So I can look it up though and find out if there is.
Is that something we also for policy?
No, I think they encourage it, but it's not their policy. I think you make your own policy.
What was the question?
Is the decertification non-reciprocal thing, MBLC policy?
Yeah.
Well, I think
I
hopefully,
don't know.
I mean, town meeting hasn't happened yet, you know, we're reading the tea leaves a little bit, but
Yeah.
hopefully for the sake of I mean, there's a lot of dedicated staff at that library, isn't there? They're obviously the patrons, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but it's just a reminder that.
Yeah, the director there is working very hard to just not have it zeroed out. That it will be really hard to come back if it's zeroed out, but if they at least keep, and plus they'd be mothballing the building, it's like there's so many factors. So at least if they can keep something, they can build back.
What's the history of this Saugus one? How long was that?
How long ago was that?
How long was it? How long was it? 6 or 7?
Yeah, was it like 2 years, 2 or 3 years? It takes a little while to get it back.
Okay, I don't have anything else to add to it, I mean, I just agree with the policy, but that's,
Yeah, once we know what happens at the town meeting and everything, we'll talk about that next month.
thanks.
Okay.
In other bleak financial news, we lost $4,000 grant. You've already absorbed that?
Yeah,
I was expecting that it was possible. So, so when they applied, Jackie and I talked about it and I said, well, let's just decide to cover that no matter what happens. Actually, we were gonna cover it if we didn't even get the grant, because the staff had put so much time into it that if there wasn't enough funding and they didn't get it, it would be like a lesson in how to do grants, but they would still be able to do the project. So, yeah, we're gonna do it.
That's the worst budgetary thing that happens to us. We're in great shape.
If only, right?
So I looked up the Saugus, so they received waivers for 4 years, and then the 5th year they finally got decertified, and then they were decertified for 3 years.
It was
that
great.
was Saugus,
So, yeah, 2007 to 2010,
that was Saugus.
yes. So they received waivers for 4 years, and they finally, after the 5th year, couldn't get another waiver. So they underfunded it for 7 years.
It was a long time.
But they never zeroed, they never went away, they were just a decertified library.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We have someone in line so that Megan doesn't have to burn the candle at both ends anymore.
Yes, to April 28th.
Very good.
Rachel, I believe it's Manides,
That's a new hire, is that right?
new hire.
Yeah.
Where'd she come
No,
from? Where's she coming from?
Marblehead. So the advantage there is she's already part of Noble.
Yeah.
So she's been working with the Noble system.
Yeah, I never bugged Megan with my IT questions. I'll have to,
Well,
I'll give her a couple of weeks to set up. Okay. Other comments, questions about the staff reports? Okay, if there is none, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to accept. Laura?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, it passes unanimously. Public participation, looks like we have a couple folks on the line. I will go ahead and ask you to introduce yourself, and if you have anything you'd like to say, you'll have the floor. We'll start with Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin. I work in a reference downstairs and just observing.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And I don't have a name on the other black square on the Zoom. AC?
Well, they're not the one. Can we shut them off?
Well,
that may also be a staff member.
okay.
And I don't know if they don't have a mic or, I don't think there's any way that we can see
But it's
that.
still public, somebody can still listen in.
Yep.
I don't wanna say anything.
So you are muted if you're trying to say anything. Feel free to jump in if you ever get that unmuted. Otherwise, enjoy our meeting. Correspondence. I didn't see any. I mean, there was a couple of sizable secondary attachments in the packet this month,
Yes,
but I suspect we'll talk about that later.
yeah, I don't think there was, I don't think there was anything. Oh, the Blossoms note was added, which is not really correspondence. But I added that at the end, and that's what's in the paper and where else I sent that.
Did that went out via email at this
Yes,
point?
the email thing, yes.
Did you receive any,
Response,
Chris?
comments from it, no, I don't think so. I don't know, it's been a long month, so let me think about that, but I don't think so.
I actually received some thank yous when it was announced. For what it's worth.
You got a thank you?
I got a couple of people that contacted me.
Actually, you know who contacted me?
Oh.
Sharon.
Oh.
Yeah, Sharon said thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to committee reports, budget, IMLS.
There really isn't anything else on that, on IMLS, it's just all, they're taking it to court, I think, or, I don't know, you can follow that on MBLC. They do seem to be pushing it. Ed Markey's working on it, and, I mean, they're not just laying down and saying, we're not gonna.
Yeah, well, I mean, museums are a big financial engine that is about to get turned off too, so that's not great.
Was it you who just sent us, or that it was libraries were level funded in the House budget?
Oh, yeah, they came from,
That came from the state
the
today.
state, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll see. Level funding sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also got a cherry sheet that said, state aid was gonna be 78,000 for us. That's 2,000 more than we got this year.
Dig a hole in the backyard and bury it.
Yeah, or get another RTU or something.
right.
Yeah.
So on the budget, we're 88% expended and about 79% of the year. Are we looking at a variance at completion? Are we looking to be in the negative January 30th?
On June 30th?
June 30th.
On June 30th, yeah. I'm playing it close, so I don't know. If we run over, it will go into state aid and it will be attributed to the maintenance contracts and the parking lot, because that was an extra expenditure. But we've got water from water and sewer, we have some extra money there. So, I'm kind of hoping that we actually just break even.
Okay, so worst case, I guess the worst case scenario is always catastrophic, but your worst reasonable case scenario, are we talking
The
1,000 over, 10,000 over, what's the?
The worst case scenario, when you look at the operating budget status.
Yeah.
I used almost $13,000 from this year's budget.
Okay.
To do the parking lot.
Okay.
So if I had to take that $13,000 from state aid, that's the worst case scenario.
Okay. But there's a notion that it will be a lot closer to zero.
I'm hoping
Okay.
that I can get that I can just break even.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're running out of knobs to dial and levers to pull, so.
I know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, electricity's the big, the electric bill is the thing that's gonna make us or break us.
If it gets hotter on Memorial Day, we're something, right? That's,
No, maybe not. I mean,
No?
if we get through this month, it would just be 1 month instead of 1 month back. Cause May, I don't pay until, I pay that in June. Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see.
it'll be exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Building and grounds.
Building and grounds. Dave and I decided to look into replacing the awnings on A1 Street.
Okay.
They're bad.
Mhm.
And we're gonna have some work done on the grounds.
I missed last month, apologies.
Just regular work on the grounds to clean up. And the stairs
Yeah.
are gonna be done any day now, it's the weather.
Yep, we're on the books for that, it's just,
Yeah.
a matter of,
And that would take like a week.
I think he said a week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
when we stop doing our best invitation to Seattle, we'll have to get it done.
and we're gonna have carpet replaced in the lecture hall.
Okay, any closures required for that?
No,
Awesome.
Is there a timeline for the carpet replacement?
early May. I rushed that because I wanted to make sure I could get the carpet at its current price.
Yeah.
But then I found out it was made in California, so we're good.
They get their material from somewhere, right?
Oh, that's true, I didn't think of that yet.
Okay, thanks for that. Friends?
That was me. I went last week, I think it was. So I'm gonna read from my notes. Their honey sales are really high. They're not sure why. Taxes are done. They just voted to roll over their CD to another term, so they're locking away some savings, I think, for 6 more months. Membership is up. They've been working on collecting addresses from their PayPal account. Book sales coming up soon in May. They still need a lot of volunteers, and the last book drive is next week, the 24th, which is over spring break. It's gonna be an evening one, 4 to 7.
Awesome.
Oh, and lawn signs will go up for the book sale after the election signs come down. That's it.
And I am on the hook for the Friends next month. And so, I think it was supposed to be Jackie as the primary and I'm the backup.
May,
May,
Oh, yeah, there it is on the agenda. Okay, great. Thanks, Amy. Okay, gift funds.
nothing new there.
So when
Well,
the
yeah.
group gifts, will that show up eventually on the report, or is that just gonna get folded into a larger fund?
I think we can decide what we wanna do with that, and probably it will be folded into the larger fund that is an unrestricted fund, and that's where the Creed money goes. A lot of times they have given us checks year over year kind of thing, and that's going into unrestricted, so I think that's probably the best place for this. But I'll have Janice recommend what she thinks is best.
There wasn't a restriction attached to it.
There's no restrictions at all, yeah, which is nice.
Janice is the first financial, or was it
Yeah.
first?
That estate had books in it, that when that woman who donated, her estate had books, and Janice asked me about that, did I know what we would do with books? So the Friends went, and Janice was so pleased with the Friends' work that she asked them if they wanted to go to Winchester to do another one. So it's working out for everybody.
All right.
she actually has a third now,
Does she have another one? Yeah.
not good for Janice. Maybe I'll-
I know, it's good for Janice.
Catherine, I have a question about the estate. I think at the Friends meeting you had said that she left a percentage of her estate to the library.
It's
So-
10%.
So is the money that we were heard about last meeting, is that what we're getting, or is that just an initial amount and then the estate is being closed out, or?
Yes, that was an initial amount, and then this estate will be closed out. There's a house that needs to be sold, and I don't know what else, but that was an initial disbursement,
Mhm.
and then they'll finish it off. It will take longer to finish it off.
Right, okay.
It's very generous.
It's amazing. Okay, legislative advocacy. Just talked about the level of funding coming out of House Ways and Means, anything else going on? Other than everything?
Other than everything. The catalog has a banner, the library catalog has a banner that sends you to, I think, MBLC to keep, if you want information on it. That's all at this point.
Thanks. Personnel?
That would be under new business probably.
Okay. Yeah, I already asked about the new hires,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that was, I think, probably the
Yeah.
only thing to talk about there. All right. Can you go back to the committee reports? Very good. New business, review of trustee role and resources.
So you had 74 pages of stuff. And mostly I sent that just so that you would have an idea, when you have a question, there's a place to go. And all of the documents that are here are probably the highest level documents. And after the election, I'll forward that digital binder that has more information in it. But I think the key points is that there are state statute that regulate what trustees do. The bylaws regulate that too at a town level. And then I think it's on page 19 of the digital thing, but there's a working together roles and responsibility guidelines. And that's just a nice sheet that has everybody's role in one place. And there is similar information in the trustee pocket guide. But I did want to run through that a little bit in that the director, the board, and the friends each have a lane. And actually the town has a lane too. And libraries that are broken and have problems, it tends to go back to people not being in their lane and knowing what their roles are. So they're all pretty clearly listed there as simply as possible, so that's just something that you can refer to. There was another thing that you could refer to that had to do with when you could go into executive session. So there are only 10 reasons that you can go into executive session, and they're almost all related to if it's public, it will affect your bargaining position or your position, but everything else. And then when it comes to human resources, the only thing that can be in executive session is if it has to do with someone's reputation or health, or it has to be private information. But evaluation wouldn't count. And I did check with Sherry about doing the thing that I thought we would do is like a retreat thing, and she said that is a public session when they do it. So not even that, because even though you're not voting on anything, you're talking together, it's a public body, we're all in one place at the same time, so that always needs to be public.
Yeah, I know when the school committee does that, they have to announce when and where they get public meeting.
Do they? Yeah. So I was wrong about that, but I knew to call Sherry, and I think that that's the key thing, that there's a lot to being a trustee. Karen Sadler is probably gonna run the other way when she sees 74 pages coming at you. There's a lot to it, but you don't have to memorize it all, you just have to know when, where do I look for something when I need to know it. In the little guidebook on page 17 of it, there's 8 essential tips for success. And those are probably helpful too. So there were 2 that I thought I wanted to mention. Number 2 is understanding the roles and responsibility. The library director manages the library, the staff, and daily operations, and the trustees support and evaluate the director. So it's a little bit like the superintendent in the school department, or I'm trying to think of a business that all I can think of is Elon Musk. But I'm trying to think of a business, like the CEO, as opposed to the board that, you might read about. And the other one is number 7. If a staff member or library user has a complaint, refer them to the library director. Do not try to handle problems on your own. So that's important for both if a staff member has an issue or if a patron has an issue. If a patron has an issue, like call me or text me immediately. And the entire board should probably be a part of that. And I would be a part of that too, but you don't want a lone range or anything, because the left hand kind of needs to know what the right hand's doing. So that always works better that way. And I think that might be all I really have on those 74 pages. The open meeting thing. Okay. So did you glance through it? Did you have any questions on it? I mean, even the open meeting guidebook looks like it's 30 pages, and that's just the guide. I mean, the law itself is, it's so extensive. But I think with open meeting, you just wanna err on the side of caution, and I know, like emails, if I send email, I'll tell you don't reply all. If you reply all, that's open meeting territory, so. Just, we need to know that there's things we might not know.
Is that the most recent version of the open law guide?
Yeah, and
Within a date.
it says, yeah, is it 2018 or something?
2015, yeah.
Yeah, I looked to see if there was another one, and that was the most recent one I could find.
Attorney General Maureen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's I thought there might be another one, but maybe if the law itself hasn't changed since then. So,
So the idea of that, it could be a remote open meeting, is there an explanation of what that involves? Because that was after COVID or during COVID. Is that local or is that?
that's local because I looked that up today. I lost, Zoom went down today for a while. So I emailed Sherry to say, what happens if I have to cancel this meeting? And she was probably trying to figure out what happened to Zoom, so she didn't get back to me right away, so I looked it up. And we could have had the meeting. It has to be posted, the door has to be open, people have to be able to get in, but it's not a requirement that it has to be Zoomed.
But isn't there an amount, like we can't all be Zoomed?
I think they
Oh,
extended that.
They extended it,
the
okay.
ability to have a fully
Yes,
virtual meeting.
Okay,
yeah, so
but that's all local anyway, it's not part of the open meeting law
Well,
that
it's
we're.
a state law that lets local decide.
Decide, yeah,
yeah, that's what it is.
But if there was a snowstorm and we decided to just do the meeting virtually,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have, there's no requirement that enough of us are sitting in person.
Yeah.
Right.
As long as it was.
Because early on, that's what it
That's
was,
what
you
it
had
was,
to have
yeah.
so many people in the room and then other people could come in.
yeah,
But no, that was extended, that we could all be remote.
There's no requirement that we have to record the meeting on Zoom, but it's good practice. We don't-
That's
we
a
don't have to.
that's a town thing. And I sort of feel like the town says you have to.
Okay.
It's not legally, but it's not Tom Mullen says I have to, but I think there's lots of people in town who would say,
You don't-
yes, you wanna do that because
You don't have to, but
it's good practice, yeah.
it absolutely is good practice. Thanks for setting this up. I like having this on my phone. I put it on the right one. So was this just an opportune time to send this out with the election coming up, or was there like some instigating incident?
Well, there was an instigating thing and it had to do with the evaluation. there were questions on, and when we do that, is that next on the agenda? When we do the
Yeah.
evaluation, I'll be able to, ask my questions, and
Okay.
you can ask yours.
All right, anything else on the roles one sheet, the trustees guidebook and the open meeting law guidebook? 65 pages down, let's keep moving. The evaluation.
So one of the things, I'll start and then you can all jump in, I guess. One of the things I noticed about the evaluation is that it's based pretty much word for word on the job description, which doesn't always make sense for all the questions. So some of the things, it's either people couldn't answer or I think it's hard because it doesn't necessarily match. So some of the things, I highlighted the ones that I wanted to talk about. And then you can all talk about the ones that you might be interested in. So on the first page, the behavior traits, one of the comments was needs to build team buy-in to decision-making. And I wasn't clear what that was. And in conversation with Amy, I mentioned the flag thing, and you had felt that you weren't 100% on board with that vote. And I thought that everybody was. So the decision making for this body is very important to me, that everybody has a talking point and agrees. Now, it's gonna happen that not everybody's gonna agree and the majority is gonna go because you can't go on and on and on with some things. But you want everybody to be able to work with policies that they understand and that they can defend. So that's important to me. And when I went to FinCom, it came up that there was something that they didn't want to back. And I recall strongly saying, I'm not going to town meeting without their 100% support. So I feel like I try to get team buy-in. If I don't, I want to. So going forward, I want that out there, that's what I want to do. Now, the other thing is that I'm not sure that actually relates to this body as opposed to the staff. And that's because of other comments that were here. So then on the second page, for job duties, halfway down, the comment is adapts to developments in library, but should look to big picture development to help with retention of staff. So I am the big picture queen. And if I'm not recognized as being in tune with big picture, I would want to talk about that. What big picture are we not seeing and how you would like me to look at things differently? Because I feel like that's a strong suit of mine, so if it's not recognized that way, I'd like to figure that out going forward. And I don't understand how that would help with retention of staff. So that was something I wasn't that clear on, so if somebody had something there, they could get that to me. Develops and implements the policies and procedures, manages the budgets. Number 4, recruits and develops library staff. Now this is drawn specifically from the job description, so it doesn't lend itself to being translated into an evaluation. And there are 3 comments that appear to apply to staff in a way that it looks like staff went to trustees and trustees did not come to me. So one of the things is an anonymous staff questionnaire is needed. We have never talked about that before. I have in fact done an anonymous staff questionnaire.
I have to disagree on that.
What?
We have talked about anonymous surveys before. You said
About
you-
what?
About anonymous surveys. You said you don't like them because they don't get to the root of the problem.
Oh, okay, so I did, did you know I did one? Did I
No,
say that I had done one?
no, not that I heard.
You might not have been there.
Okay, I mean,
I vaguely remember that as being part of the conversation, that they don't uncover.
Well, it
Back a couple months
I
ago,
get
yeah.
things out of context. When whatever is reported is out of context. I think part of what's hard with anonymous staff questionnaires in an organization as small as ours is that you don't know who it was, but you're imagining who it was, because there's only 20 of us.
What would this questionnaire be? Would it be an upward appraisal of you? Is that what
No,
that
it was mostly, I do a questionnaire, like every July. And it's just stuff about the building, about patrons, about where we're going. It's different every year.
Yeah.
It gives people an opportunity to,
Is there anything open-ended about it?
yeah, some of it's open-ended. So there was that. The other one was not enough attention to honest feedback during exit interviews. I don't know how you would know that. I do know that people on this board recommended that we do exit interviews because I didn't do them. And they are really helpful and they're part of our onboarding now. So we do exit interviews regularly. It occasionally has happened that we won't do it because of a particular way that someone left. That it's not in anyone's best interest, but you know, like somebody had a health reason, and so you get a health reason, I'm not gonna, that it wasn't appropriate under those circumstances. But yeah, we do try to do that.
Can I say something about anonymous staff questionnaires? I do remember you saying that about one and how it wasn't really valuable to what, you know, but that you did one. I took that comment is that someone thought there was a need for more. And from my interpretation, I didn't really know what scope we're talking about. How many are needed, or when is it needed, or is it needed on a regular basis? That's how I took it. I do remember one, but I took this comment as somebody felt more when needed, not just the one. But
It's
I
also
still don't-
possible that what it means is that it should be an anonymous staff questionnaire from the trustees about the director. Because the staff surveys that I do are based on services and sort of the culture of the library. So it's possible that people are looking for more ways to evaluate me.
But that's not currently what our scope is, or
No.
is- no,
Right, and that's when should be my
that's
point,
right, yeah,
because that's not in their contract.
It's not our lane.
Nor is it our lane.
Right.
And I think
no, it just dropped,
without,
it's all
I
right,
don't,
it's all
I
right.
don't wanna put words in anybody's mouth, because I don't, so
No,
necessarily know. I think, at least for me, and you know, I live in the same world, right, where I have a board who doesn't really know what happens day to day, and I understand that. I think there can be a general anxiety when you see high staff turnover, right? And
When
so,
you see
when you
what?
see a high staff turnover, and I think we don't know, and we'll never know what happens 9 to 5 or whatever that library hour, of that. And I think that I don't want to I'm not trying to put words in people's mouths, but I think at least from my point of view, it would make it feel better for you, not only because anytime we see high staff number, we don't know. Somebody got sick, somebody moved to Connecticut, like every time, right? We knew the reasons for it. But for us to know for your sake that, well, we're doing because sometimes there are going to be people who decide to, who weren't happy on the way out the door. And to know that, okay, well, we are collecting data, anomalies happen. Some people leave and really happy, some people leave not happy. That happens in every organization. But knowing that it's like, well, we're collecting the data, we're evaluating the data, and we're making decisions based on that data, I think is enough to know, we're never gonna be I'm never gonna get involved in individual things, but I think that's where it's almost for your sake to go no, people are gonna have their opinions, people are gonna do that, but we're doing that. I think that's, for me at least, it felt like there's been a lot of turnover, and every single time we've talked about it, and you've been very open every time saying that this is what's happened. I don't think there's anything big, but to be able to say, and also we're doing the exit interviews and we're doing the surveys, and if there is small tweaks we can do, we're making those small things and everything, but I don't think it's, certainly I would not be in favor of getting I certainly don't want to see the exit interviews unless there's something that rises to the level of a legal concern or anything like that we would need to see it, but that's not our role, right? Our role is not to be the HR director for the thing, it's just understanding that, okay, they're being done, and maybe everybody's concerns go, this is the full life cycle of how we do this and how we manage it, and therefore that's how we, and this is when we get the data or we everything that we work on that. But I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like this in your situation where you work, but part of what makes it complicated is that it's personnel information is private, so I can't always be upfront about it. I know somebody was, there was some staff, somebody left, and some staff were very upset that they didn't know about it. And it wasn't my place to tell. It was, the person was leaving and didn't want people to know. So it wasn't my place to tell, but yet afterwards it looked like, you withheld that information. So I am often in between multiple conflicting, you wanna be open. I was open once and had someone, a union person tell me that you're not supposed to do that. I'm always walking this fine line of, I said something out loud that everyone in the room already knew, but yet the union person said I should never have said it. So I'm always trying to figure out what's the role here.
Yeah, I just, I think to Jeff's point is because we all sort of vaguely remember that at one point there was a staff survey and I think you said they're not very valuable or anything like that. I think if I was gonna read this, it would read it as we just wanna make sure that we're collecting all the data, and some data is good data, some data is, take it with a grain of salt data, but it's that we're still collecting that and still doing it and doing that stuff. But because I think that's, to me, whenever you see high turnover, again, it's time of year, it could be the time of life, it could be a lot of things. Whenever you see turnover that feels like a lot of turnover, that that's where the general anxiety, and we're never gonna know, like I said.
Yeah, but I think too, you said this too, Adam, you've done a good job, Catherine, of so moved to Connecticut. There's nothing, whether they loved working here or didn't like working here, their likelihoods moving on somewhere else. You know, there's, like, I think if you factored, if you took out all the people who were moving for things that were in trouble for, I think there's a kind of two threads with this too, is kind of the feedback, and it's so helpful seeing the comments, like, we didn't have that last time, thank you, but it also speaks to what we talked about last time, that like, it's really challenging for a trustee to assess if you're applying appropriate best practices for human resources management without being in the room with you as you're applying these practices. So it kind of speaks to what can we actually realistically, I think, the ratings on that, like, I don't have enough information to say, you could be doing a terrific, I think it's.
Well,
some of
see,
the
I take it
matrix.
as the overall, like, she's in charge of everything. How is everything running? Like, how do we see it in general? Because we're evaluating her and she's working the library. How is she doing on doing that? And one of the things, like, I mean, some of this part some of the comments confused me, because overall, whoever said high levels of turnover in library services were not impacted. And, I take that as the key, that for whatever reasons, maybe that people left and the services were not interrupted. And you're right, in the time that I've been a library trustee, and there, people stay forever. But I think that was the world after COVID. I think it's not uncommon. I don't know if it's just library or whatever, but I know a lot of people in business have seen the same thing. People that can, especially people that can work remotely, they have their companies in California. So there is a different climate for employment in general. I don't know, so it kind of leads us back to, we have to look at how this current tool as being appropriate for what we wanna know or what we need to know to evaluate. A director.
Because that part 4 as well had the most ends, like it's not gonna be answered, because you don't have what you need. The other thing is that it doesn't take into consideration the town and human resources. So, I apply appropriate best practices for human resource management based on how the town has directed me. I'm not a human resource professional, and I don't know all those details, but like these 74 pages, I know when to look. So I know when to call and say, I've got a contract here, how do I interpret it? How do I do FMLA? I don't know how to do all those things, but I know that a lot of times I need to ask. And should there be problems, they're gonna go to a town level.
So
The town would be
they would go
involved.
to HR.
The employees could go to HR. They could also go to you, and you could go to HR. But HR is in a position to investigate things. And I did ask Amy what would happen if someone went, and I said, everything's fine over here, but what would happen if, and she said, I have to think about that because that's never happened before. And she said, I would go to the trustees because you answered to the trustees. And she thought about it in terms of, well, what if it was Steve? And she would then go to the town council. But she's HR and she's dealing with my contract and all the union contracts. So I feel like the staff is protected by those union contracts. When I was an employee under those contracts, I always felt like I had resources beyond you do have the trustees as a resource, but you also have your union and you have HR. And I think it more properly resides there because I don't think this board's in a position to figure stuff out like that.
Yeah, but I think there's two different pieces to it. I think there's issues like a contract issue or a thing that's, it goes to HR, it's a thing, bylaws, you follow the contracts, you have to do. And I think that, and again, I'm not meaning to imply that I don't think you're doing this. I think that it's more of a, the difference between, to your point, people move around a lot. The difference between keeping people for 2 years and keeping people for 3 years is, over the course of time, is a big difference, right? And so and there's where, that's where it's like, okay, we're, especially with, I'll say this in public, but the new generation is challenging to work with sometimes. I know, I think it's understanding what are those things that are nudging one way or the other. And I think that's, like I said before, it's more, I don't necessarily even want to ever, the trustees don't necessarily need to see the data or see the exit report, or this is the culture survey or whatever you're doing internally to kind of do that. It's more of just knowing that it's being done and then looking at it and going, okay, like for whatever reason, I keep putting carrots in the break room and thinking that it's nice for the employees, but they all hate carrots, right? They want, and whatever those things are, to know that we're going, okay, what are the small things that we can do, or what are the things that we can do? But again, or you could look at it and go, this is all just people complaining because they have to work. But just know, that's, for me, it would be more of knowing that we're doing these things, we're evaluating it, whether it's you and the assistant director, or whether it's just you, and that we're collecting it. But I agree, we're never gonna know, right? We don't know.
So I probably need to find ways to more accurately report sort of the culture and how things are happening. Maybe not the culture so much, but so when we started having a lot of turnover, we keep track of everything. So I know everybody's start date, I know how long people have been here. I looked at the average time people were here. And you can see that there were people here for 40 years. The people who came, they were here for 40 years. And then newer people were staying less amount of time. But that less amount of time was even pretty significant. That was 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years. Jackie was here for a while. So, and then I looked to see, well, how many people have, churned. And the churning, the 2 years, 2 and 3 years tended to be part-timers. And then when I looked at reasons, it's like, because part of my question is, how could I have foreseen this, that I wasn't gonna get, in what instance is it worth having somebody for a year or two? And how do you foresee how long someone's gonna stay, and what expectations should you have for that? If somebody takes a job at the circulation desk, is that really something that somebody would do for 40 years? Or is it something that, different people do it for different reasons even. So I looked to see, why were people leaving under certain circumstances? And was it things that I couldn't have anticipated? It was that kind of thing. So there may be ways that I can report that to you. I don't know if that would make a difference, but it might.
Maybe on an annual basis, but it kind of creeps into it being private information too. I don't know, well, maybe some of it isn't private, so. But
Right, it would be.
Because if only one
have
person
to be
is
the
left
stuff that
this
wasn't
year,
there,
The results don't have to be, we don't need to see the gory details, we just, we conducted whatever you want to call the report or survey
Like,
or
what are the
analysis,
trends?
whatever it is. I think that would be good. So for what it's worth, I don't recognize the wording in here as my words, but it's no secret that I've asked a lot of questions about exit interviews and turnover over my term, so I'm sure that some of that is coming from me. I'll also say that just kind of the baseline. I give you very good scores, but I never give a review, again, bringing work into it. I don't give a review without something to get better at, right?
Right,
So
right.
there's definitely some of those things, again, I don't recognize the wording. It's like, you did a great job. Here's where you can focus on going forward. Take it or leave it, right? So just to say all of that, yeah, I mean, I think that would be terrifically useful if we could hear the what are you doing, not the what did you hear necessarily, right?
Right.
I mean, if you're going to then take specific action based on what you found, that would obviously be useful information, specific general action, not like
Right.
Sally's fired, or I need to give a raise to Jamie. Those kinds of things don't rise to the level of trustees. But, if you're going to institute a casual Fridays, I'm just making stuff up. Yeah, I think I would appreciate hearing about that.
Well, I know that's your thing, because that's the first thing I said to Jackie. Oh, you better tell Jeff you left for a good
Oh,
reason.
yeah,
He's gonna wonder.
I want that data, Jackie.
Today was her first day in Bedford.
Oh,
Yeah.
she took some time off. That's good for her.
I think they had some projects going on, some building projects.
Oh, okay.
So, today was her first day.
We wish her well. But the here and now, just like to say that we're focusing on some negative comments. There were a lot of very positive comments that came out of this too.
Oh, yeah, I was pleased, and I feel like, I can feel the appreciation. But like you said, I'm looking for the things that, what do you wanna do moving forward?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
And I'm a communication person, and one of the things about aging is that I've discovered, as much as I love communication, and I have always prided myself on it, I'm not particularly good at it. People don't hear what I think they've heard. I talk a lot, I use like too many parenthetical phrases and stuff. I'm not a master communicator. So there's definitely, and that affects everything. If people are only hearing 10% of what you say and you're like going on and on. So I think that's something that I have seen. And seeing where people had, that they couldn't make decisions on, or all of that is very useful and gives me a way to say, well, how are we gonna change this so that people get
Can I
that?
ask you a question on number 4? You said there were 3 things. 3 things for this recruits. Is it the last sentence?
The last
That
one.
confused me.
Should consider all avenues for input on decision making, including anonymous surveys. Because the decision
So I didn't know if
making,
that meant from us or from the
yeah,
trustees or for the staff or and our decision making. So I think that was a confusing one for you.
that was confusing for me, because not everybody works closely with me when I make decisions, but those who do really suffer. I have maybe a unique way of making decisions, and I often will just say, let me have 24 hours. And then I can do it within 24 hours, but I don't. And sometimes it was my gut reaction now that I'll go with. But I do consider all avenues, which is not always the quickest way to do it.
What's the hardest part of the job, do you think? Staff
Building,
is,
the building is, because it's not, I don't know anything about it. So I have to, I'm doing HVAC, I'm learning all about HVAC. Who knew what an RTU was? Now I know it all.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the comments I put in that didn't make it through to the is it's about offloading all the Dave's knowledge, which is something we can talk about separately. It's not part of it. Is it in there? Okay.
And I just wanna say something about the survey. When I read everybody's survey, but they're truly anonymous. The rest of the committee, nor Catherine, has seen
Oh, yeah.
those individual ones. So, and you are right, most of it is, there were a lot of like, library well staffed, excellent job, those were multiple people.
Sure.
So these were things that I just wanted us, Catherine to see and think about, and then some of them were confusing to her, so that's why we're having this little,
Absolutely.
for clarification or not, because
And-
it's not, I mean, I think in general it was good, but there was just some,
And
Not
succession
necessary.
planning for David, that's not a bad thing. It's a
But it's,
necessary.
it's kind of impossible.
Well, right, so it's like, you're not gonna get one human being to do everything that you do. It's when he decides, he gets the lottery, and he rides off into the sunset, but it's a matter of splitting up what he has and distributing it out. Anyway, it's a good example, I'm glad to see it's in here, it might sound like a negative at first glance, but it's absolutely not, it's just what we need to do.
So, yeah, the planning for Dave, is actually Megan. Megan works really well with Dave and understands, they speak the same language, and he was standing next to her yesterday with some thing telling her how she could solder it to get it to work. And I thought, I'm not touching that one. And I also have tried to build into the budget, like there's a lot of things that Dave can do, and I've told him not to, and I've purchased it. So that money shows up in a budget, these are costs we have.
That's right.
And,
Don't tinker this, we need a new one.
right, and,
well, I think
and
that's a bad,
DPW knows it too.
I think it's a valid point though, because that's kind of what we just talked about, people who stay the 40 years as opposed to people staying 3.
Right.
When you stay for, it's like when you do blossoms or anything, you do something once in Wakefield, it becomes a tradition. So people are invested in more than their job. And I think David is an example, I think you're an example, I think Sharon was an example. I think there were a lot of examples we had, you know, in our pocket that we don't have now, and I think you're right for being concerned about that, because the trend may be that going forward. And it's life, and it is something different than we've experienced.
But I also want to say just that I've had nothing but amazing interactions with all the new staff too.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have a great team here, and every time I worry like, oh, well, that person's gone, the next person shows up, and I'm like, oh, well, this is a great person too, so I feel like I just wanna say that, so that the new staff
I
don't
think-
feel like they're constantly being told, well, you're not like the old people, you know?
No, but
So-
but they're not in that they just don't have the experience, and when you don't have experience, every day is harder. You know, the things that my worst days were before I had someone say, this is how you do that. This is how you work with that child. This is how, so to watch someone do it, and to learn how to do it. And things are increasingly more complicated with people, working with people in general. That's become more complicated. So you're trying to give people the skills that they need when you really can't. You know, you're a public service person, but you're not all of these things to fulfill all of those needs. So that's part of why when we did the strategic plan, I said, let's make it really simple and step back and let people get really comfortable in what they're doing. Because even if they don't stay here, and people do tend to move more, even if they don't stay here, you want them to go with good experiences, to come knowing more than when they came. And I think you feel, more confident during the day and less stress when you've had some experience in knowing this is the best way I can handle this. Maybe it didn't turn out the greatest, but this is the best way to handle it.
This might be good for, when we talk a little more about the evaluation itself, but before I forget my point here. But what I've done of evaluations at work, or giving evaluations, there's usually an opportunity for the person being evaluated to share some comments about this. So if I have 5 goals for the past year, I will kind of write up something that I can give to my manager, and they will assess it related to those goals. So I think that's kind of, I don't know if that is relevant for these sections where it's aligned supposedly to the job description. And usually evaluation, my experience has been, it's just like a baseline that you're doing your job, and then it's just the goals, how are you meeting those? But especially since these cover 3 years, man, it's really just hard to remember what happened when, or even just having some bullet points of from Catherine about, here's a goal, these are the, the highlights of how it was met or not met, to give us something to start with.
Something if it's people, self-scoring is always hard, but just to say, these are the things I feel like I've done well, these are the things I'm gonna continue to work on. It just helps you go, oh, yeah, I agree, like, or, oh, I think you're missing this point here, or that. I think, again, there was so many times for me looking at it going like, you don't wanna just pick a number out of a hat, but sometimes you go, well,
Put in every
based on my limited knowledge of this particular area.
So one of the things that I did put down here is that we might wanna have a plan for improving this instrument.
This is,
I've seen
this is
more.
different than we did. No,
This has been the same one around,
40 years old.
yes, but it's the only one in any of our
No,
cabinets.
were you around the last time? This
Yeah, it's 3 years.
time was. Okay.
Are you sure you responded last time?
Yeah.
I take my time and do it thoroughly.
Yeah.
It's my excuse, right?
Yeah, but I agree, there are so is this just something, this isn't the town, this isn't from the town, this is the form that's come from the town.
We don't know where.
No, I don't know where it came from, it was the one that Sharon always did.
Well, our new trustees
Or if
are
the
up to
shadows
being elected
onto
as
the
HR
yes.
managers. So
I
maybe
saw
we can
that.
give her that task, which joins the trustees.
I saw that,
So,
that
So
might
but
be useful.
what would be like, I think we're all expressing like different levels of like, this isn't quite working, so like maybe thinking about what would work better. So we have flexibility to change it, because it's not coming down from the town, so like what would be helpful in terms of the feedback you would want, Catherine, and also what is realistic for us to be able to assess on.
I think like the personnel committee should like look at this and bring something
Yeah.
back and really look at, I mean, we all kind of generally knew what our lane was, but maybe we need to think about what our lane is. And then from there, how best we could assess those things we have to do about her. And then, I mean, that would be my recommendation, to, look at other surveys and kind of brainstorm about, what is our lane and how are we gonna evaluate her? And then maybe look at some other surveys and kind of I'm sure that that's what this was, that was, somebody compiled a bunch of things from other people. And then bring it back to the trustees and see if that's valuable. The other thing, maybe there's a shortened version of, each year saying, well, because, she's written her own goals, she had goals. We're gonna write this year's soon, I don't know about tonight. But maybe like a quicker thing, maybe ask for a self-evaluation, the year before the general, a check-in about that. That would be my suggestion, is just having gone through this multiple times. So it would be a combination of both. But even, I think we need to like really understand what our lane is in that respect before we start brainstorming about that.
And then the goals too, I come up with goals that are sort of based on the strategic plan. But sometimes there have been trustees who have like a bee in their bonnet about a single thing. And that can be really useful. We had one trustee and his key point was be open as many hours as you can.
Jack left
I
that
just
with me
saw
when he
I just saw him, and when he left, he said, no matter what you do, be open as many hours as you can. That was his, that was the thing. So when you have a little bit of direction that way, and it's not that, yes, we're gonna be open, but I know that that's what you value. Allowing people into the building is the thing that you value, so,
But we were closed on Sundays for a while, and we got that,
right,
so
right, so
that's
that's,
something,
yeah.
that was something to work towards.
Yeah, so it kind of, if you know that you have a thing that's meaningful to you, that's probably helpful too. So we could probably try to come up with goals for next time and also think about what kinds of evaluation instruments are available, and like you said, maybe the human resources person will be on then, and she can know the kinds of things that would be useful.
So Susan, you recommend taking a look at this packet, kind of digesting it, and we'll come back next time and put some meat on the skeleton of commissioning the personnel subcommittee to go off and do X, Y, Z. Does that sound like
Yeah.
that
Well,
one?
I think we could do a short thing, maybe a self thing, and I think we have to meet and discuss what we think, but I think,
personnel can be discussed.
yeah,
The evaluation itself, the bones of it, and come up with some alternatives as you move forward to what this looks like, because I still think there were, pick a number, 15 questions there that you could take totally different ways.
Yeah.
Depending on how you
Yeah.
read it, and that yields answers that are so different from what the question may have been intended.
right,
So, and that's where the length comes into play. And I think, I almost felt like trustees' position is, and there's not a right word for it, to be above the fray and manage the director and make sure that's going the way it's supposed to be. And to Adam's point earlier, the amount of detail that the trustees should be looking at might be minimal. That's, it's an overview for how the building functions, how the direction functions, and place in the community.
So the only other thing that's on here that I wanted everybody to think about, somebody had said, and it was maybe in the, somebody said something about the budget documents not being the city.
Yeah, that would be my comment.
Yeah, the budget documents are not as great as that. So everybody looks at budget documents differently. Everybody looks at numbers differently, so it's very simple for me to do something more than one way. I do all the budget multiple, like 3 different ways every week. Cause I'm looking at different things. I use QuickBooks, I use a spreadsheet, we have Munis, I have something that has encumbrances on it, I look at it different ways. So I can produce different things, depending on what you think it is you wanna know and how you would like to see it.
And that was my comment, by looking at the operating budget, for example, there's enough detail line by line. It seemed to me that more detail over time with the last quarter. There's 2 columns here that what the mix is. But some sort of a time series, and it doesn't involve, the time series wouldn't be long, it would be maybe 2 or 3 columns. Let me think about it, see if I
Okay.
can find an example of something that's more explanatory. I get the sense when I look at it that I don't really know where we stand. We know how we stand with respect to the budget, expenditure budget. How do we stand with respect to past performance? That's sort of. But let me see.
I'll think about that too, because I'm not sure, like I have
We'd
to.
like to see
I'd have
Jeff's
to-
question every month of like, how we doing? Because, to that point of the gas budget, right, we're at 97%, but we all kind of go, well, hopefully it's gonna get warm someday, right? And so that's why I think it's helpful to understand, even at, year to date last year, we were at 90%. So we are tracking ahead of where we thought it has been a cold winter or something like that.
Oh, right,
So, like,
right, okay.
Just understanding, to me, even if it wasn't the raw numbers, although, there's no reason to refute it, but like understanding, we're at 79% of our personnel services budget, and same period last year, we were at 80%, so we're actually, we're gonna, because we, theoretically know how we finished last year, right, we finished fine. So that would just be, it would probably save a lot of questions of like, how nervous are you, and how, because, obviously looking at this building maintenance, like you said, HVAC is speeding away and everything, but I think, is that what you're, it just
Yeah,
would be
that's,
really,
you're getting
it
it.
would be really helpful
You're getting it,
to
that's what I
know
was trying to say.
where the line is compared to where we were last year.
Everybody's speaking more clearly than I am. That's good.
Yeah, I just have to think about how the best way to present that is and how to track it.
Put a worry meter on it. Are we in the green, yellow, or red?
Well, so like the books and publications budget, right? I feel like every year sometime in May, we all go, hey, you only spent 70% of it, and you go, yeah, we buy all their books in June. And so, and that's,
Oh, yes, every
but we ask every May, and I feel like now I've been doing this for 5 years, that it feels like I know that, but especially for a new person.
Yeah, I ask every year in May too. I don't like that runs so late. And I think in some cases, it's just because the stuff doesn't come.
Yeah.
That's the worst, that.
Stands out, because books are kind of what we do.
Doing that, but the thing with that number is that I have to hit that number, I have to spend that on books. So regardless of what you see there, that has to be spent on books. And because we have overdrive now, if the books don't come in, we can put all the remaining money on overdrive, and you zero out that budget.
So there's always an offering for that.
There's always an offering for that,
And overdrive goes towards our accreditation.
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, because we have to spend that money on that.
Yep.
So the things that you're looking year over year, actually, that are worth looking at are, repairs on the, when you look at HVAC, what's repair, what are increased costs? What are those, if there are differences, what are those differences?
Well, so I look at like professional services, right? We're tracking 44%, right? Is that because you've known that HVAC is gonna be so bad this year that we're not doing as much professional, I don't even know what's in that budget, but
Yes, that's part of it too.
professional services, or is that just because the bills have been, that's sort of, this would help to kind of put the
Right.
context in it.
So if you looked at professional services on QuickBooks, it's not just professional services, it's all the sub-accounts.
Right.
So what makes up professional services, and those you can see how they fluctuate.
And just, this is completely different, and it's more because I know we have new trustees potentially starting. Just the general, like, how is the library paid for would be really just, and because, you piece it together over time, but the first time somebody hands you the gift funds sheet and all this other stuff, you go, what is this? And then there's the state aid and everything, so just something that says like, just so you know, this is how everything did, 2 million comes from the town, and the rest we do through gifts and grants and whatever, so just, even if it's a pie chart or something really simple.
I do have something visual and relatively simple, because I did it for Stephanie when she was hired, because she didn't come from a municipality. So I could use that again.
That doesn't even have to be every month, so that once a year or something.
Just an overview of a new year type
Because
thing.
we talk a lot about the budget, right? Because there's the town budget, which is the budget that we all talk about a lot, right? But then there's like all these side budgets, right? Because every gift fund is sort of budgeted on its own thing. And then you sort of maintain a
There are a
little
lot
side
of
budget of the state aids, and those are completely unbudgeted. When we look at our budget that we're approving every year, for the towns approving every year, that doesn't include gift funds, it doesn't include grants, it doesn't include what we know is coming in from the Friends, or we hope is coming in from the Friends. So like, the true, we budgeted, what is it, it's not that big, a little over 2.1 million, something like that. That's what goes, but the true expenditure of the library is probably more like 2.25, right? Because of all the different pieces they can put together. So that's part of it, that like, none of them get put together into a big sheet that
to
says,
see it all. But that's what I report state aid, for state aid. The financial report is everything we've expended. And everything that came in that year,
How often do you do that? Once a year?
once a year. So that, I do that during the summer and it's due in October 1st, I think.
Can we see that?
Yeah,
Probably.
you sign it every year, I don't know if you really look at it.
No,
I think when you look at it, I'm not sure it's, well, yeah, it probably does, it's probably worth looking at. Or I could make it into something else, that would be kind of an overview.
It even gives you the 10,000 foot level, an appreciation that, like you had said, it's not just, I mean, yeah, a big part is what we ask the town for. That's not the end of the story.
Right.
Because we,
So-
friends have given about 50,000 this year.
Yeah, so I know from state aid that we're spending about $40,000 a year on programming. And that's with librarians doing the bulk of the programming now. We're still spending $40,000. And that seems like a lot of money,
And none of
it
that is
doesn't
in the
really
town
go
budget.
that far.
None of that's in the town budget.
And none of that's the town budget. So, and libraries have discussed that. Programming was not always part of library service, so it's not part of anyone's budget. So you've gotta come up with a line item, and in order to do that, you usually have to take it from someplace else. Like, how can I come up with a line item for that kind of thing? You know, and is that something that you want in the operating budget? Yeah, so it would be a way to look at it, to figure those things out, to figure out those kinds of questions too.
Even just seeing this is the total budget of the library that I think we're gonna spend this year. And knowing this is like, even if it was color code, this is what the state, the town pays for. Like, I've pieced it all together now, but it took a while. So just for.
So if I had it on one page, that would be really useful. Yeah,
And also kind of especially with certain things being uncertain, just kind of knowing it's not, it's a good reminder that like all the money's not coming from the town, it is coming from these other it's just kind of like with your own personal, like, you have some sort of diversification of where the money is coming from. So if state aid stops completely, okay, what percentage is that probably gonna rely on?
Your friend is sending you a message. A2, no mic.
No mic?
Making sure you understand.
oh, that is Ariel, she's the children's librarian downstairs. No, Mike.
Okay, that was the end of, any other comments, questions, concerns? Good. That's the end of the new business. Items not reasonably anticipated by the chair. A couple items, by the way. Go with the room first.
No, good.
One, I just want to remind folks that anyone newly elected between now and next meeting needs to go to the town clerk to be sworn in or sworn in again, as the case may be. And she's not online, but Jackie Natali has served with us 1 or 2 terms, I don't remember, just one term. 3 years with us, she's a valued voice. I appreciate her volunteering to help run the library, and I wish her well going forward. She has declined to run again, so we wish her well, and I want to thank her for that. All right. Anything else?
No.
If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and we'll vote. Laura,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.